do because you believe so strongly in what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you make all these other voices available, but you also create a space where these people, everybody gets to sort of practice using their voices, and I see it happening all the time. I see everybody gets stronger, and I mean.
Dan asked another question about what benefit has writing poetry had for you personally, emotionally. I would have to say, sort of having my garden of lesbian poets, growing it, cultivating it. It's just an extremely high pleasure, really. It is such a pleasure to see over the years poets grow, and it's just amazing, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to ask on that same token. I'm sure it follows that same idea of being a champion and cultivating that garden. And I really like that. I like that idea. The idea of your garden. The transition of Lavender into headmistress.
Well, probably a lot of what I do is selfish in essence, essentially. It starts as a selfish thing, which is that I had tons of writing that I wanted to publish in books, and so I just started doing it, and then I wanted to get other people in there to, it was just like an astonishing thing to start making books, and I got so excited about it that I wanted to do it for other people too, so that's how Headmistress started, and luckily Reza Denberg agreed to co-found Headmistress with me, so it's been quite an amazing journey, really.
Well, it's just a really neat thing, and you even expanded further into the Sally Jane.
Right. Sally Jane book. Carolyn Boll's Social Dance was the first book, was already published. Dan, you mentioned earlier she's about to publish it. No, it has been published for what? A year or so, Carolyn?
Well, it had sort of its soft launch in July and then its serious launch in October. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I just got my time mixed up because, Mary, you just had a book come out and you're about to have a book come out, and Carolyn.
Oh, you're talking about Nuts in Nutland. That was in March.
Yeah.
Yeah, my children's book.
Yeah, I was curious about that. I was curious about how that sort of came to be after all of your work in the in the poetry scene. A lot of times the poetry scene doesn't overlap easily with the children's book scene. And I'm curious how that worked out.
Okay, well, this is just, I'll try and make it short. It might be a long story, but I think I can make it concise since I'm a poet. All right. So at Eratosphere, one of the poets there said, okay, here's a challenge. Write a 100-line poem with a couple of words that he threw in. Okay, so I think he said nuts and America. So I wrote this 100-line poem in like an hour or something. And then a friend of mine wanted to read it to her son because it's like a children's thing. And so I spent years trying to find an artist to illustrate it. And then not knowing that with children's book, you're supposed to send your text to the publisher and let them find the illustrator. I didn't know that. But also I wanted to just, work with an artist myself because Lavender publishes art, and I love art also, especially lesbian art.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love Hannah Barrett's art and finally realized that she'd make a perfect illustrator. So we worked on it for, I don't know, a couple of years. It took a long time. Art takes a long time. And also I had to learn how to illustrate, make a book with full color illustrations on the inside. So that was a challenge. And in terms of marketing it, I think that might be your question, like how do you reach children and read, a whole different market for this book. It's not easy, and it's really, in a way, not happening because I don't know I think Leah Newman advised me, the famous children's book author who wrote Heather Has Two Mommies, she advised me to join this association. Hi, Emily. Emily wants to get in on the conversation. She advised me to join a conference or an association of children's writers and go to conferences and stuff, but I just can't. I got too much to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the children's book marketing is really in Hannah's hands right now because she lives in the New York area and she's doing little events, in galleries and making nut crowns with children. It's amazing what she's doing.
It's neat actually following her and seeing the different places that she's reading and seeing the circles of kids with her, and it's a really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, and the whole thing has just been a lot of fun, really.
How are we doing on time for you two?
I feel like my voice is starting to wear out, getting a little thirsty.
Okay. Sorry, it's hard to stop some of these conversations.
This is really lovely.
So Carolyn, I want to ask you about that book that is not about to be published, that has been published. The Social Dance Book of Ballroom Poetry, and it's clear from earlier that dance really has influenced your poetry, but what exactly do you mean when you say ballroom poetry?
Well, I sort of came up with that idea really because that element of concrete poetry that goes throughout the book. It really, and I say this all the time now, but it's really that the book is working with the notion of the page as a stage. Mm-hmm. And I really see the words on the page like people on a dance floor. And so it really does have kind of a dance floor structure, and it moves through different forms of dances, if you will. And so it just sort of started to kind of blur that line between dance, word, and image. And then I just thought, this is ballroom poetry. I don't know. And so that's what I call it.
Hey, Dan, did you see the video that Carolyn made with waltzing with another headmistress poet?
Yes, I love that video.
Isn't that incredible? I love that waltz so much. It just blows my mind, really.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up, Mary. Thank you. It was really fun to do.
Well, and that's just something I really enjoyed the integration just in a lot of the videos of different, the multimedia of Headmistress and Lavender, of combining art in all its forms and poetry. And especially, something like dance, which is not quite as obvious until you see them connected, and then it just seems like, why hasn't this been done so many times before?
Well, I do think that is one of the strengths of, starting with Lavender Review, then moving through Headmistress Press and on to now Sally Jane Books is that, and, as a dancer and a writer, one of the things that I really love is this notion of the still point, and the still point having movement, and the still point having both silence and word, and that sort of powerful place of the still point where, for me, all the arts converge, all of life experience converges. And so, by the time it comes around to Sally Jane Books, well, it just seems the perfect place to promote books that are exploring that very notion of where all of those things converge. And so in Social Dance, there are images in the book that are also they are the footprints of the dance lessons themselves, and then there are the poems that have visual component. And so I just really love that that Mary has been receptive to and also is actually sort of moving towards this whole new area of books that obviously bring all these things together. I just think it's wonderful. Just wonderful.
Carolyn, do you remember the poem you got published? She got really one of her best poems published in the Gay and Lesbian Review. Can you just read the French or recite the French part of that? Because I'd love to hear that.
Oh, sure. Yes.
I mean, like just the title and the first couple of lines, not the whole thing.
Well, maybe I'll just read. Oh, yeah. Okay, so it's called Salon de la Mariée, and because, of course, I'm in Montreal with a very bilingual milieu, to use a French word, so it's called Salon de la Mariée. Which is basically a wedding convention, where you go and you're going to go sort of figure out who's going to do the cake and who's going to do, dresses and all of that stuff. And so my wife, Sue, and we had decided we were getting married, and so we went to the Salon de la Mariée, but it was, at that time, we were like right at the beginning of the curve of gay marriage. So anyway, it's called Salon de la Mariée. We're going to the Salon de la Mariée, going dancing at the Palais de Congrès, wedding marches, and hey, wedding cake. And who's going to pay? No matter. We've got two laissez-passers. Band or DJ? And what about the bouquet? And it goes on, and we sort of waltz through it. And
right.
But the poem does play back and forth between English and French and dancing, and that was really nice that they published that, and that then you were good for including it in this book as well. I have to say, one of the things about the social dance, one of the things that I've sort of been discovering along the way is how many people, lesbian, whatever, lots of people just really connect with the very notion of dancing, and one of the people told me this story. He's my hairdresser, actually, and he'd read the book, and he told me that he was a competitive ballroom dancer when he was 15 years old.
Wow.
And and that he had actually because he was like in the world, like he was 8th in the world or something. And he said that after he stopped dancing due to an injury from hockey, if you will, he actually started teaching ballroom dancing. And in his ballroom class, he would get people who were court mandated to go take ballroom dancing to manage anger, or if there was mediation for divorces, the court would send them to kind of go work it out on the dance floor. And I was like, this is, people ask me why the title of the dance, social dance, and I think that there is something that's very powerful about dance and about how people are brought together through dance. And I was just really, really moved when Nick, my hairdresser, told me that story, and it just made so much sense to me that there is this sort of powerful place for partnering and exchanging and really listening, because dancing is really listening. And so anyway, it's been a really lovely journey doing the book and working with Mary on that, and working with the designer on it, and it's been great.
Yeah, it's amazing how many things come back to listening.
Yes, right?
That's how I feel on writing in form. like with the form, it's like a dance also, and you have to listen very carefully to everything.